All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are taking a journey down the Mississippi River with Mark Twain's incredible classic, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Now, if you're studying for an exam, or you just need a really solid grip on the plot, the characters, and all the big moments, you are in the perfect spot. Let's get into it. So, everything we're talking about today comes straight from the source, the novel by the one and only Mark Twain. And we're even looking at some of the original illustrations by E.W. Kemble, which were the very first time readers ever got to see what these iconic characters looked like. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to follow Huck's journey from start to finish. We'll begin with his life in St. Petersburg, then his escape down the river. We'll cover his adventures, the crooks he runs into, that huge moral decision he has to make, and wrap it all up with that wild finale at the Phelps farm. So our story kicks off right on the banks of the Mississippi. And it's here that we meet our narrator, Huckleberry Finn, who is stuck in a world that he cannot wait to get out of. This is our guy, Huckleberry Finn. After he and his buddy Tom Sawyer found some treasure, he's been living with the widow Douglas, and she is trying her best to civilize him. But for Huck, being civilized, with all the rules and school and itchy clothes, it feels like a trap. What he wants more than anything else is to be free. So Huck is basically caught between a rock and a hard place. You've got the widow's world, which is well-meaning but totally suffocating. Huck calls it dismal, regular, and decent. And then his abusive, alcoholic father, Pap, shows up, kidnaps him, and locks him away in a cabin, furious that Huck is getting an education. So neither the respectable side of society nor the outcast side offers him any real freedom. And this is where you see just how clever and resourceful Huck is. He stages this whole elaborate crime scene, right? He uses pig's blood to make it look like he's been murdered. And then he just slips away to Jackson's Island. He's finally actually on his own. Or so he thinks. Huck's little solo escape mission is about to turn into something much, much bigger. It becomes a shared journey for freedom. And this, right here, is where the heart of the novel really starts beating. So, on the island, who does Huck run into but Jim? A man he knows from his town. Turns out, Jim has run away because he heard his owner, Miss Watson, was going to sell him down the river. That means New Orleans, which would tear him away from his wife and kids forever. For Jim, this escape is a life or death situation. When they hear that bounty hunters are heading for the island, Huck and Jim know they have to team up. They find a raft, and that raft, it becomes their sanctuary. Out there, on the water, they're equals. They've created their own little world totally separate from the hypocritical and cruel society back on the shore. For both of them, that river is the only road to freedom. Now, this trip down the Mississippi isn't just one long, lazy river ride. It's a series of adventures that really test and strengthen the bond between Huck and Jim. And this is where Huck gets his real education, not from a book, but from learning about the good, the bad, and the ugly of human nature. And their journey is packed. They run into murderers on a sinking steamboat. They get separated in the fog, which leads Huck to the Grangerfords, a family stuck in this senseless, bloody feud. But their biggest test comes when a couple of con artists climb aboard their raft and take over. Okay, so if the raft is this symbol of honesty and freedom, then these two guys, the Duke and the King, they are the absolute opposite. They are the worst parts of the civilized world, all rolled into two slimy packages. These two hijack the raft and claim to be a long-lost English duke and the King of France. What a joke. They go from town to town pulling all sorts of scams. And it's Twain's way of showing just how greedy and gullible people can be. From a ridiculous, scammy play to faking a religious conversion, their worst con is when they pretend to be the brothers of a dead man to steal his family's inheritance. And Huck is just disgusted by the whole thing. And that brings us to, without a doubt, the most important moment in the entire book. The Duke and King's final, awful act of betrayal forces Huck into a decision that is going to define who he is for the rest of his life. In a truly low moment, the King sells Jim back into slavery for $40. $40. Huck is just heartbroken. See, everything he's ever been taught says that helping a runaway slave is a terrible sin. The right thing to do would be to write a letter to Miss Watson and tell her where Jim is. It's a full-on war between his conscience and his heart. And you know what? He actually writes the letter. He sits down and does it. But before he sends it, he starts thinking about his journey with Jim, about how kind Jim has been, about their friendship. He looks at that piece of paper, and after this intense internal struggle, he just rips it to shreds, saying, "All right then, I'll go to hell." This is the moral climax of the book. In that single moment, Huck rejects society's twisted rules and chooses his friend, no matter the consequences. So, now that he's made this huge decision, Huck sets off to free Jim, who's being held at a place called the Phelps Farm. And just when you think you know where the story is going, it takes a wild, chaotic turn when a familiar face shows up. In a crazy coincidence, the Phelpses are actually Tom Sawyer's aunt and uncle, and they think Huck is Tom. Huck just goes with it, but then who shows up? The real Tom Sawyer. And Tom, who's always looking for an adventure, agrees to help free Jim. But he's got to do it his way, straight out of the adventure books he loves to read. And here's where you really see the difference between Tom's romantic fantasies and Jim's very real, very dangerous situation. Tom shoots down all of Huck's simple, practical ideas. Instead, he comes up with this ridiculous, overly complicated plan. I mean, just look at this stuff. It's not just silly, it's cruel. It's a complete satire of adventure stories that have no connection to reality, and it puts Jim in real danger. Well, the escape finally happens, and it's a total mess, just like you'd expect. Local farmers show up with guns, and in all the chaos, Tom gets shot in the leg. And here's the amazing part. Jim, who is this close to freedom, refuses to leave Tom. He stays behind to help the doctor save him, giving up his own chance to escape. It's an incredible display of his character. Back at the farm, the whole story unravels. As Tom is recovering, he drops a bombshell. He knew the entire time that Jim was already a free man. Turns out Miss Watson had died 2 months ago and set Jim free in her will. Tom put everyone through this whole ridiculous ordeal just for the fun of it. And then, Jim gives Huck some news of his own. That dead man they saw way back at the beginning of their trip? That was Huck's father. Huck is finally free too. So we see this image of Jim, finally a free man, standing tall with the boys. And then we see Huck, on his own again, looking out towards the horizon. The journey down the river might be over, but you get the sense his personal quest is just getting started. And in the book's famous final lines, Huck finds out that Aunt Sally wants to adopt and civilize him. And for Huck, that is the one thing he absolutely cannot do. After everything he's seen, all the hypocrisy, the cruelty, the nonsense of so-called civilization, he wants nothing to do with it. His search for real freedom has to continue. And that's the question the book really leaves us with, isn't it? What does it actually mean to be civilized? Is it the world on the shore with all its arbitrary rules and its deep-seated prejudice? Or is it found in the loyalty and the moral courage that Huck and Jim discovered on a raft in the middle of a river? That's the question Twain leaves for every single one of us to answer.